So, what I wanted to do with this video is talk about one way that a capture of processing spiritual autobiography or creating spiritual autobiography can occur. And one is a timeline. Uh, One of the things that I really want to say prior to stepping into talking about using a timeline as a form of capture for spiritual autobiography is that it can have its difficulties, right? As I shared in the other video in this playlist, when I started to look at the decades of my life, there weren't many moments within several decades that I actually really wanted to take a look at. And that was painful. And there's some moments where that is what we then choose, and we take that segment of the timeline and we take some deep breaths, and perhaps with a spiritual director or a therapist or you know someone who's meaningful to you, you parse through those times and seasons in your life. I, for example's sake, have chosen to do the timeline for L's 40s. I turned 40 in October of 2011, October 26th, 2011. I turned 40, and we were living in South Carolina. And in that year, my youngest was 2. And life was very different. I had a 2-year-old, I had a 4-year-old. All 6 children were under 18 years of age. Now, I kept this simple and didn't fill it in much. I just took a few minutes before coming on to the video, and I just found this free whiteboard system online. So you can do that, or when I'm not teaching or creating something for others, if I were truly just doing this for me, I would have my sketch pad out, and it would be out here, and there'd be all sorts of colored markers everywhere, skinny ones, fat ones, all kinds of markers. And I would be doing this on paper. I am a pen and paper kind of girl, but I really wanted to capture this visually. And so a few things. So here's my spiritual autobiography for a timeline of my 40s. The decade of my 40s was the theme for these moments that I was going to spend just taking an opportunity to reflect back and to be presently where I am, 49, and to even dream into the future, right? Because there we go, we're heading that direction. So I took a moment to just write some of the big moments of my 40s here, turning 40 in October of 2011. Even as I said to you, we were still living in South Carolina, and my youngest was 2, but all 6 of my children were under my roof. My oldest was a sophomore in high school, and my youngest was 2. I had 2 children who were still 5 and younger. That's a big deal because now I'm 49, and 4 of my 6 children are adults, 20 and over, and my youngest is now 12. And that's what happened in this decade. And I can feel that in my heart, even as I came to just teach this about spiritual autobiography. Wow, right? In one decade, I went from being an active mother of 6 children who were 16 and younger to being a mom of 6 children who are 12 and older, 4 of which are in adulthood. And so, like, what I do, even if I'm journaling and writing a timeline, I just sit back and I let that affect me as you're witnessing it affect me. Um, that's huge. And what I might end up doing, because I didn't anticipate this even happening here, is I might make a note, right, on this timeline. Youngest was 2, but I might add to that mom of 6 children, 18 and 16 and younger, right? That's standing out to me right now. That in this time, in this space, all 6 of my children were living under my roof and would continue to do so. You see, even as I was writing it, it was meaningful because when we moved out of South Carolina to Blacksburg, Virginia, one kid was headed to college. One child did not move with us. And so, for the first time in my life, one child was not under my roof. That's a huge transition for a woman who had parented babies since 1995, right? And so I'm just allowing the process and the reflection to make its impact. Yoga became a huge component. And you see, I didn't create a box that said yoga. Yoga went straight into the timeline, right? Because prior to 2014, I was in the construct, actually, not as much, but prior to 2014, I was in or emerging from a construct of charismatic evangelicalism, and they just believed that Christians shouldn't do yoga. But in 2014, my auntie, who is very dear and precious to me, would die. And I had already started to see a therapist prior to her death. And that therapist would say, in her estimation, she thought I should do yoga. And I started a yoga class and took to it like fish to water. And let's see, my first yoga class, I think, was around December of 2014 ish. um I think around that time, but by the summer of 2015 I was doing a 200-hour teacher trainer training program. And the word Mongoliso, which is Zulu for "you are an amazement," would come into my life. And that would be huge. And then I would spend years becoming a trauma informed yoga specialist. And then in 2018, I would begin a program and become a yoga therapist, and that completed in May of 2020. And I'm currently 49 now, and hiking and camping have taken off in my life, and I see that as a huge direction in which I'm bringing my practice. See, it's all encompassing for me. Yoga and hiking and camping and life just become this bubble. And with a program like this, you can create more lines. And this timeline is just me, right? It's just mine. Um, but I have done other timelines where I created in the same decade timelines. You can tell I can't draw straight. But so in the same timeline, I would create, let's see, one was kid A, right? And so this would be kid A. And this kid was the kid who went away to college, right? So graduation of high school, heading to college. Let's say in here, I put kid, let me put this here and that there, kid B, right? And so that would be kid B's timeline. Maybe that's my youngest son, and in that I would put the cello became a huge part of his life. And now cross country running is becoming a huge part of his life. And all of those kinds of things could form out the same timeline, right? The same space. And whatever you want to do on the timeline. And so it becomes yours, and it becomes a visual picture of the days and times and seasons of a specific space in your life. And you can then focus in on you can, let's say, extrapolate. Youngest was 2, and I bring that over here, and then I just start writing about what I remember of still being a mom of young kids, right? Or I can take the point of moving to Blacksburg, and I can bring it down here and write I can just focus on the move to Blacksburg, and even take a moment and do another type of writing of spiritual autobiography and step into stream of consciousness and just create a list right here. And let's see, this program is still a little new to me, so I'll just bring that here. Well, let's say moved to Blacksburg, we rented a house. We had left a child to back in South Carolina in the summer, because we moved in June of 2013, and so they had yet to even begin their collegiate career. I had found preschools I still needed. I still needed babysitters back then. I would also begin a formalized program of training while I had been in the role of spiritual director, spiritual sojourner with people for decades. I would begin official training, a 3-year program back in Charlotte. And so for 3 years, I would continue to go back to Charlotte. And then upon graduation, I became a faculty member, and for 3 more years would continue to go back to Charlotte. And really until COVID, I had an office, physical space in Charlotte as well as in Blacksburg. Now you see, you can take any one of these things along the timeline, and then even take a regular journal and be like I was in the beginning. Wow, when I turned 40, I was still the mom of 6 children under 18, and 6 children were still under my roof. And one was still sort of still in diapers. She would be in pull-ups for a really long time, but she pottied very early. So matter of fact, back in 2011, if you had asked me or told me about my life today, that I would be a CIAYT, a yoga therapist, and that I would have my own practice, I wouldn't have known how I would have made this leap. And so this is just one way of noticing growth. I know Thomas Merton has this incredible quote that if the you of you, it's attributed to him, some people will say it's not his, but if the you of you 5 years ago doesn't think the you of you today is a heretic, you're not growing spiritually enough. You know, you can use a timeline and go back 5 years. Go back. In 2011, we were part of a church that we loved in Charlotte. In 2013, some events would happen that really shifted and changed that, besides moving to Blacksburg. And so I have found the usage of a timeline both helpful and challenging, right? So if I were to do a timeline of 0 to 10, truly all it would hold really would be all the physical moves that we made in those 10 years. My father was a businessman, and we moved around a lot. So I was born in Brookline, Massachusetts. I was 2 when we moved to Connecticut. I was 7 when we moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 7 and a half. I was 9 when we moved to Randolph, New Jersey. And there you go. Like that was the decade. And so I could tell you some things about my life, but really, um, really those times were filled with a lot of things that aren't the things that I necessarily have a lot of places to put things. And I know, like, see, I'm stumbling over even the articulation of it, right? And so just be aware that if 1 year was incredibly painful, if 1 month was incredibly painful, if 1 day holds a devastating event, then you don't need a timeline of a decade. Perhaps you want to break down that day into all the hours. Perhaps from the moment that you woke up to the moment that you laid your head back down on a pillow, your life changed astronomically, right? Perhaps it's not even a whole day. Perhaps it's an hour. So be kind to yourself. Show yourself some compassion. Timelines and the breaking down of the days and times, moments and hours of our life in a visual way is just one way to approach spiritual autobiography and the recounting of a life, and then the taking of the time to process it, to grow in relationship with those events, to allow awareness to come in, to claim and reclaim components of your life and explore and discover the spaces of those days and times, to parse through the expression of life and living in those moments, and to expand into a place of growth and healing and transformation, and learning to be able to then integrate what happened within a specific set of time in your life, as to be able to touch, identify, discern out what's true for you and what action and type of flow you're going to find in those spaces, right? Perhaps as you do several decades in your life and living, you see patterns and you begin to discern different areas of your life that stand out to you. And so, this is just one way to begin the process of writing a spiritual autobiography. We're going to talk about using collage. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about using collage. We're going to talk about using music and color, geography. You heard me even allude to all the different places that I lived. You can go into the link, the notes on this video. You'll see that there's a course from the Mongoliso Listening Academy that will actually hold the whole space for the writing of your spiritual autobiography. I also wrote a book, and there's a link, an ebook on spiritual autobiography. And my email is there as well, because what I want to start doing in regards to this practice of spiritual autobiography is holding the space for each other and even coming together in a group setting and allowing for group spiritual direction or group sharing to happen. And so I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I really want to say that you can go on ldmiller.com, and if you'd like to have some support as you parse through your spiritual autobiography, hop on to my website and schedule a time with me. We can do some spiritual direction or some integrative health modalities, which incorporate some movement and breath and meditation. Just know that whether it's me or somebody who's in your life, that even as you begin to step into this practice more fully, that having support around you is really important. And you get to choose what that looks like. So I wish you well. I can't wait to hear how the practice of writing spiritual autobiography goes for you. Please feel free to share your experience in the comments and subscribe to our channel. We're going to be talking about musings that matter, do some more movement and breath type exercises, and all my making the miles matter, whether it's hiking or car camping. All of those kinds of things are coming your way too. So look forward to the next time that we're together.